These are three wonderful readings. One about the power of God, one about the power of God's forgiveness and the importance of our need to forgive others, and one about, well, just not judging your brother and sister based on what you think they should or should not be doing. I think sometimes they remind me personally of how much I put my faith in God and how much I want God to make a difference and how much I believe that God can do things. When somebody does not act the way I want them to act, I oftentimes ask God to come down and rain all sorts of fire upon them. I do. I shouldn't, but I do. And when someone does not live the kind of pious and faithful life that I have, and when somebody uses language that I don't like in certain situations, and when somebody does not seem to respect one another, or when somebody forgets the power of God and the attentiveness of God to our needs, and our need to fear God, not meaning be afraid God, but to respect the power of God in our world and in our lives. I get angry when God doesn't do what I think God should do. I get angry when the story doesn't turn out the way it's supposed to, especially since I'm living a really good and faithful life. Reminds me of a little monologue, and I'm going to share it with you. There was a time during auditions when this was the monologue that every young person between the ages of 18 and 24 would share, regardless of gender. It was a great monologue. It comes from a play called Identity Crisis by Christopher Durang, who was also known for writing Sister Mary Ignatius Explains It All to You, a wonderful reflection on faith and piety. But in this story, character of Jane is talking to her psychiatrist, and she tells her the story she has from childhood, and I share it with you. Jane says, "When I was 8 years old, someone brought me to this theater full of lots of other children, and we were supposed to be watching a production of Peter Pan, and I remembered that something seemed terribly wrong with the whole production. Odd things kept happening. For instance, when the children would fly, the ropes they were on would just keep breaking, and the actors would come thumping to the ground, and they had to be carried off by stagehands, and there seemed to be an unlimited supply of understudies to take their places, and they'd all just fall to the ground. And then the crocodile that chases Captain Hook seemed to be a real crocodile. It wasn't an actor. And at one point, it fell off the stage and crushed a couple of kids in the front row. And then some of the understudies came and took their places in the audience. And from scene to scene, Wendy just seemed to be getting fatter and fatter until finally, by the end of the act, she was completely immobile, and they had to move her off stage with a cart. And you remember how in the second act, Tinkerbell drinks some poison that Peter is about to drink in order to save him. And then Peter turns to the audience and he says, Tinkerbell is going to die because not enough people believe in fairies. But if you all clap your hands real hard to show that you do believe in fairies, maybe she won't die. So we all started to clap, and I clapped so long and so hard that my palms hurt, and they even started to bleed. I clapped so hard, and then suddenly the actress playing Peter Pan turned to the audience and she said, "That wasn't enough. You didn't clap hard enough. Tinkerbell is dead." And then we all started to cry. And the actress stomped off the stage and refused to continue with the production. They finally had to lower the curtain. The ushers had to come out and help us all out into the aisles and into the streets. I don't think that any of us were ever going to be the same after that experience. It certainly turned me against theater. And even more damagingly, I think it's warped my total sense of life. I mean, nothing seems worth trying if Tinkerbell is just going to die. This is supposed to be a comic monologue, but I do like the reflection that it gives me. I think sometimes I try to clap hard enough to show my faith, and I try to clap hard enough to get God's favor, and I try to clap hard enough to prove that I am better than the other Christians around me. But in reality, that is not going to work. My clapping doesn't save Tinkerbell in the same way that my insistence of being a certain way and showing a certain way makes me more Christian or less Christian. Sometimes it's just in the simple things that we do by having faith in a God that can save. By respecting the fact that we each approach our faith and our Christianity maybe in a different way, but with sincere faith. And maybe, just maybe, I'm also supposed to trust and forgive the way that I want God to forgive me. Amen.